Hello, I'm Olivia Smith, Career Advisor for Online Programs. Thank you for taking the time today to listen to this presentation, Branding, How to Tell Your Professional Story Through Your Personal Experiences. During this presentation, we will discuss what branding is, the tools that you can use to market yourself, as well as your how to tell your personal experiences and how they can shape your professional story. So what is branding? Branding is all about you. Your professional brand relates to your unique reputation as the professional, and your personal brand is who you are as a person and the unique experiences that you can bring to the professional world. Just as you would do research on an employer and an organization you're interviewing with, the organization and employer is also doing research on you. So think about what your online presence says about you. If something negative is found in social media that could lead up to you not getting the job or moving on in the interview process, make sure that your online presence is professional. Be careful about what you're posting and what you're tagged in on social media, because you don't want an employer to get a negative impression of you based on what they find online. So think of the tools that are used for branding as a way to tell your story. While these different sections on a resume are important components to writing your resume and should be included, also be sure that you're thinking about the specific skill sets and experiences that you have and that are required from different jobs that can be showcased on your resume. Your cover letter is a way to showcase the written communication as well as your writing skills, but it's also a really great opportunity for you to showcase your valuable experiences. So like your resume, your cover letter is an opportunity to consider these experiences that you have that are directly related to the job. One other note to think about as well is that resumes and cover letters often go through applicant tracking systems. These systems search for keywords from the job description. So if these things are on your resume and included, it's possible that the documents might not actually get looked at if they're not on your resume. So just be sure, with that being said, just consider your own story and think about how these skills and keywords that employers are looking for can best relate to your own professional story. LinkedIn is another great tool for marketing yourself. So this is a great tool to use for networking, but it's also a chance for you to show the different experiences that you have outside of your resume and cover letter. By looking at your profile, potential employers can see the different projects that you've worked on, different skill sets that you have acquired from past and current roles, and then as well as different individuals that you're connected with. This tool is also a great opportunity for you to expand your professional and personal story. So think of your LinkedIn profile like a book. The cover is like your photo and headline, and the first chapter is like the profile sections. So recruiters are not going to read the entire book. They will typically only be looking at the cover letter, the cover and first chapter. Therefore, your first impression is everything, and your profile must be in line with your professional story. If you want to be marketable and stand out, you'll need to make sure that your profile sections are complete and they tell the full story. So think about what you've done, what you want to do, different things that you value, and who you are. And all of these things can be showcased on your LinkedIn profile. So I know that there are a lot of you that might be going through career changes, but thinking about your transferable skills as part of marketing yourself is really important. So you can gain these skills in any part of your personal life. So every job is going to look for some type of communication skills, some type of technical skills, leadership skills, organizational skills. So you can find these through education, volunteer experience, soft skills, and personal experiences. And with personal experiences, those don't even have to be directly related with a job, as you'll find out through our activity portion, but you can acquire those skills through any different type of thing. for this discussion, we will have the opportunity to work through these different scenarios, and you'll have the opportunity to talk with your peers and think about what type of transferable skills these people can have. And those of you who are watching this presentation, please feel free to join in the discussion and reflect as well. So the first scenario that we have, Caitlin is a stay-at-home mother of a 7-year-old and a 3-year-old and has been out of work for 10 years. She's finishing up her bachelor's degree in business administration. She has an interview coming up for an administrative assistant position and is unsure of how to talk about her experiences without getting too personal. What are some ways that Caitlin can market herself in the media, as well as talk about her experiences during her interview? So at this time, I will be stopping my share, and we can have a discussion on this. So please feel free to chime in.
Caitlin's a lot like my situation because where I'm going, I've been outside of that field for the last 11, 12 years, doing something completely different. Unfortunately, all the folks that I know from Caterpillar have all got moved everywhere. So I really don't have a whole lot of, I see Mark nodding. I don't have a lot of references from where I'm at now. Any ideas, Olivia?
Yeah, so you're saying like just with not having a lot of personal experiences, you're trying to figure out where you can get the references from without the professional work?
Pretty much, yeah. I've been doing assembly work for Caterpillar for 10 years, which is very different than drug and alcohol counseling, which is what I did before and what I'm going to go back into.
Yeah, I think one of the biggest things to think about with that is kind of thinking about what people can attach to your character and your professional work. So, you know, there's a lot of different connections that people can have, whether or not it's in work, because you can have personal connections as well, as long as they're able to, you know, speak to like the character and your work ethic. And if anyone else has anything to add to that, please feel free to chime in.
Yeah. Hi, David. I think you bring up a good situation that a lot of our, we use the term adult students go through. And so, you know, something I would encourage you to think about is, you know, using your education. You're currently a student, and you're kind of refreshing yourself on kind of best practices and more updated ways of doing this type of work. So, you know, not only would I encourage you to think about some of the things you've been doing in class and some of the things you've been learning as far as kind of like updating your skill sets, but it would also encourage you to reach out to your professors. Something I encourage all my students to do is, you know, a lot of the professors who teach here at NLU do so because they also do that work in some part, you know, maybe part-time, or they previously did that. A lot of our professors are very well connected. So, you know, you bring up a very good point. Sometimes it is about who you know. And so starting kind of small with the network that we have, even other people in class. You know, I'm assuming right now you're taking some online classes, so it's kind of hard to interact with people, but maybe you could even ask the professor, you know, could we have a discussion about this? Or if there's someone you've kind of connected with through online posts. My wife just started her master's program at NLU, so I've been watching her go through some of the discussion posts and some of the things that she's required to do. And it seems like pretty easy to connect with someone and just sort of reach out, you know, hey, I'm kind of trying to build my connection. I was wondering if we had any time to talk. Because I think a lot of students are probably going to be in a similar situation. And so, you know, maybe you know someone that they don't know. Maybe they know someone you don't know. Maybe the professor knows an organization that none of you are familiar with that's, you know, maybe a little smaller, a little more off the beaten path, off the radar. So, you know, just asking, just kind of, you know, starting from scratch, starting with the people around you. And I think you'll be surprised at how quickly your network grows, for sure.
David, I would also encourage you, if you are studying, if you want to be a drug and alcohol counselor, I would encourage you to, if you have a personal story, I would encourage you to share that with with employers and find strength and meaning in that story. Counseling is a very unique field in that way, where you can share personal stories like that to market yourself. I am a therapist myself, and a lot of the counselors and therapists that I follow on LinkedIn, especially the drug and alcohol counselors, they are very open with their own journey. And that is something that they share on LinkedIn, and they take strength from that. So I would definitely encourage you, if that is a path that you want to go on, to share the personal stories.
I was a line counselor in San Diego for 3 years. And the last year and a half, I was a supervisor level counselor. So I've got the experience. Problem is, it's 12 years old. And a lot of the folks in San Diego that I knew as counselors have either retired, gone other places, or can't even contact them at all. So a lot of my counseling experience, my co-workers who know how I work, are gone.
And so you do bring up a good point, and I think you had kind of mentioned, seeing some similarities to this story that Olivia posted in the chat that she shared, and your real situation. In the world of career advising, we use the term transferable skills. So something, and I don't know if you've talked to Olivia or anyone else about this. I do think there's something to be said for kind of identifying some of the things you do that could carry over into any number of other jobs. Olivia and Bushra and I have been doing this for a long time, and I can tell you, and I'm sure you've seen this as you start to search for jobs and look for opportunities, a lot of those jobs are looking for things like communication skills, the ability to even listen well or be detail oriented, have a knowledge of Microsoft Office, right? And you could get some of those skills from any number of different places. And so sometimes I do think we need to kind of put a spin on it, right? So, and I'm sorry, what do you do currently? I missed that.
And now I'm 100% classes. When Caterpillar shut down our entire plant and put 1,500 people out. So there's a little federal program allowed me to go back to school, and they're paying for my schooling.
Gotcha. And so to your point, it might not seem like there's necessarily a direct correlation between the work that you were doing and the work that you're looking to get into. But I think if we dig a little deeper, we can find some of those, again, we call them soft skills or soft science skills, transferable skills, and a lot of jobs, especially in counseling, a lot of those people skills, a lot of those communicative skills. And you have to do that, in manufacturing or any number of other jobs, right? You have to know how to talk to people. You have to know how to work well with people. You have to be detail oriented. You have to be organized. And Bushra, in her experience, I'm sure can talk to you about that as well. Talk to those points. After the counseling session, you have to make sure that your set of patients, you're providing detailed notes about each of them, that you're keeping all of them organized. You're not giving the wrong information to the wrong person. And so I do think there's some overlap there, but it does take a little bit of digging to kind of identify some of those skills. Bushra, what do you think about that?
And to your point, Matt, I really like Matt's point about transferable skills. You mentioned that you were doing a little bit of counseling 15 years ago. What I would encourage you to do, if you haven't already, to meet with Olivia about your resume, because there are different resume formats where we can structure what you did in the past to be the first thing that people see. So they're not paying attention to the date, they're just seeing your skill set, and they're seeing what you did in the past. So then the Caterpillar stuff can go to the bottom, and the first thing people do see is the counseling experience.
At this point right now, I'm a year away from having to write a resume, but a basic one is already in the files. But it's got a lot of work going to be done on it between now and next year.
Yeah, and it's never too early to start that. And like Bushra said, that's a really great point. Like, you can have like a relatable experience section, and that can go at the top. So that's not necessarily going to matter if it's a current job or not.
Yeah, because they look at it real fast.
Exactly. Yeah. And then in terms of references, I know it can be really difficult if you don't necessarily have the, experiences or the people that you're working with anymore. But no, like Matt said, it's definitely great to reach out to professors because they can also speak to different parts of your work ethic. And, you know, you just know how to build that rapport and relationship with them. And they know, you know, like what your work ethic is like. They know the different transferable skills that you show in the classroom. So they could speak to that in a references page.
I don't want to take up the whole time with my.
Well, so the other thing, just to kind of mention this really quick, and I would love to hear from some other folks to see how their situations kind of compare to Caitlin's here. But I do think it is important to list your education on your resume prominently. I think when a lot of people, you know, see a job listing and it says, you know, we want this and this experience, a lot of people don't think of your education as a place where you gained experience. And I would strongly encourage you to shift that line of thinking, because, you know, the whole point of going to school, right, is to gain knowledge and to gain skills so that you can do this job. I think most of us have pursued college because we wanted to kind of move up on our career field, right? And the whole point of going to school is to help you become educated in that field and help you gain those skills. So, you know, with a lot of my students, I list their education, you know, bachelor's or master's, what their program is, National Louis University, and then underneath, you know, I might break it apart and say, you know, completed coursework in, and talk about some of the coursework you've completed, talk about some of the skills you've gained, talk about some of the knowledge and the experience you gained in the classroom. You know, when you look at a job listing, it doesn't always say, you know, we want hands-on work experience. Experience could come from any number of different places. It could come from school. It could come from previous jobs where you were paid and worked full-time. It could come from volunteer opportunities. It could come from part-time positions. And so it's up to us, again, talking about branding, to kind of shift the narrative. We get to control what the employer sees. We get to control what we tell them. So as far as they know, you know, you went to school, you got A's, you're now a master at this, right? With a master's degree program, and it literally has master in the title. And so, you know, you are the expert. And so now it's just up to us to kind of format and present that in a way that makes sense to employers. And Olivia and Bushra and I can help with that for sure.
Does anyone else have anything to add, any concerns of their own?
Well, my concern is I haven't worked in corporate for over 6 years, and I'm self-employed right now. And I just want some tips on how, like David said, how do I show, well, you all kind of answered my question already, but if there's something else you can add to it that would help me out. So right now I'm just self-employed. I have like 2 clients that make up my salary. And how would I, you know, reference that, you know, and sell myself, you know, when it's time to be employed in the corporate world?
So this is a good question, and I don't want to take up Olivia and Bushra's time. I don't want to speak the whole time here. I do think something, you know, that I would encourage you to look at is, as you start to find positions you're interested in, go through that list of job duties, of qualifications, of requirements, and sort of ask yourself, like, okay, can I do this? Have I done this before? Do I have experience with this? You know, being a self-employed individual, I mean, you know better than I do. You do everything, probably. You run the whole show. And so while that's awesome, as we get into more specific positions with more specific corporate, private organizations, sometimes they don't want someone who can do everything. They want someone who has a more specific role. And so I think part of the conversation is really honing in on the skills and the experience you have that are relevant to that job, right? So, you know, running your own business, you probably do some accounting and some finance and some bookkeeping and things like that. That's a very good skill set to have. I wish I had more of a skill set in that. But if you're applying for a role that doesn't need you to do accounting, maybe we don't need to speak to that. Maybe we don't need to talk about that. What we want to focus on is, you know, the specific things that they're asking for. And so, you know, a nice job listing usually has that listing of, again, they might use the word requirements or qualifications or expectations or even job duties. And so, you know, what I encourage my students to do is kind of look through that list and ask yourself, can I do this? Have I ever done this before? Do I have experience with this? Those are the things that the employer is specifically looking for. And if you can say yes, then we want to make sure those things are specifically on your resume and you're speaking to those points in an interview or on a cover letter. Does that make sense?
Yes, yes.
Mimi, if I can add to, yeah, go on, I'm sorry.
Sometimes I can overdo it. So I'm glad he's saying that, just to narrow down what they want, can I do what they're asking me to do? And just
exactly.
Right. Yeah.
And Mimi, if I can add something to what Matt said, To really think about, if you're not already, to really narrow down who you want to work for and have a specific resume for that employer. Because employers can tell if you're just giving them a generic old resume that you're sending to all these other employers. So take what Matt is saying about looking at the job description and matching that job description to your resume. So you, at the end of the day, you may have 5, 6 different versions of the same resume, but each resume has a different element to it.
Okay.
Yeah. And also to add to Matt and Busher's points, something you can do too is just kind of break down what you do as a self-employed individual, and just break down all of the different job duties and all of the different skill sets. And then when you're going to look at the jobs, then you can actually compare and contrast different things that you have to create a resume.
Okay. Okay, thank you.
Mm-hmm. Does anyone have any other thoughts on the overall scenario or other questions? Otherwise, we can get back into the next part of it. Okay. Okay, so this next scenario, Dillon started working on his bachelor's degree part-time 2 years ago, but stopped to work in his father's warehouse as a forklift driver full-time, and has been doing so for the last 12 years. He recently decided to finish his degree in psychology. He doesn't feel that he has relevant experience for an upcoming internship he needs. How can Dillon talk about his experiences for an internship when he can't understand the transferable skills he gets from working in his father's warehouse? So I will go ahead and put that in the chat as well, and people can chime in with any thoughts that they have on that.
In Dillon's case, working as a fork driver. I've known a lot of fork truck drivers, and they see everybody in the plant. They talk to everybody in the plant. They have to have good communication skills right off the top.
David, I love that you mentioned that, because that's kind of like what Matt was saying earlier about reading the job description and taking little bits and pieces of what you see on the job description and applying it to whatever job you had. So absolutely good on the communication.
Any other thoughts, Tammy? I see you thinking here. Not to put you on the spot if you don't want to be on the spot, but I see those gears turning. Oh, sorry. I think you might be muted still. There we go.
All right. Okay. He needs to look at his interaction with the workforce. Maybe he's taken a lead role in within his position or stepped up, so all of that will carry over, to future careers.
Absolutely. Yeah. I think you and David hit the nail on the head with that. Definitely, again, putting that spin on it and thinking a little bit more abstractly about some of the skills that you're gaining in that role, for sure.
Do you guys think that organization may be something that this individual, Dillon, may be good at, working at a warehouse, and maybe he could possibly use that as a skill as well?
Without a doubt, you have to know where you're taking your stuff.
So organizing files and keeping track of case notes and all of that may be transferable with the warehouse. Planning. Absolutely.
Something else I might encourage you to think about, especially for internships, especially in this day and age, I do think there's something to be said for your interest or your passion in a role. So if you're stepping into a new role that maybe you don't have quite as much experience as you like, there's probably a reason that you're looking to get into that. So, David, to your point, I'm assuming that you're getting back into counseling because you feel strongly about that. That's this is a bit of a calling. And so, Dillon in this example is going back to get his degree in psychology. And I've worked with Bushra long enough, and I've worked with other people who work in that field. And I know that for many of them, it's because, it's something that they feel very strongly about. It's something that they're very passionate about. And so, your passion and your interest might not necessarily work well on a resume, but I do think there's something to be said for that in a cover letter, in a job interview. Even today, you'll see a lot of organizations that say, we are looking for employees who are passionate about change, passionate about doing this type of work. And I do think there's something to be said for speaking to that, right? Maybe not on a resume. We do want to try our best to showcase the skills and the qualifications and the experience that we have. But in a cover letter, in a job interview, as you're talking about why you're applying for this role, why you're invested in this position, I do think, talking about why the work is important to you and why, you feel in your heart of hearts that this is where you should be resonates with a lot of employers.
Matt, I love that you mentioned that, because I think about even your headline on LinkedIn. If any of you guys have a LinkedIn and you're thinking about the headline, so many times I see students with the headline, seeking blah, blah, blah opportunity. But if you have a headline that speaks to your passion, that may get more responses. Just the other day, I woke up to a message from somebody who recognized my headline and reached out to me. So thinking about, okay, how can I make sure that the first thing people see when they look at my LinkedIn is something that I want them to see and speaks to my passion? So instead of having your headline be something like, I'm seeking opportunities in the clinical psychology field, thinking about why does that field resonate with you?
I'm trying to see, do I even have a headline on it? I didn't know we could do that. So
yes, ma'am, you can. It's the top thing.
Okay. All right.
Anybody?
So I got to get it together.
And
we're here for you, Mimi. Whatever you need.
That is all part of your brand. I talk to my students about this stuff all the time, and I think Olivia and Bushra would agree. When we talk about branding, I always think about restaurants, right? You're advertising for yourself. So your resume is a billboard for you. Your job interview is a commercial for you. Your LinkedIn is, your social media, right? And so, we are always trying to convince a company to eat at our restaurant. That's how I always frame it, right? And so we want to do everything we can to give them reason and to show them, here's why you should pick me. Here's why you should come to my restaurant rather than the restaurant across the street, right? And so, sometimes restaurants will talk about, their Michelin stars and how well-trained their chefs are. Other restaurants will talk about, they're in this because they love it, right? They're not in it to make money. They're in it because they like grilling hot dogs and they just want to grill hot dogs for a living, right? So, understanding the audience and understanding what you bring to the table is part of that brand. And I really think that, I don't always like to think about it this way, but I do think as you start to connect with employers, you are advertising for yourself, right? You're convincing them that they should pay you. That's what a paycheck is, right? And so we have to give them reason to give us money, if that makes sense.
And it may seem like a stretch in the beginning, but I always tell students, get out of your own way, because sometimes we think that, okay, we don't have these experiences, we have nothing to prove. But like we've been saying throughout this discussion, take it from your classes. Whatever you've learned from your classes, apply it to your resume, apply it to your cover letter, LinkedIn, interview. Sell anything that you have until you can get the opportunities that you want. So really just get out of your own way and think about all of the great things that you have done and try to sell those.
Yeah, that's a really great point, Bushra. And that speaks to the personal experiences too that I was talking about earlier. So, if any of you were ever, stay-at-home parents for an extensive amount of time, there's a ton of valuable skills that you can get from that. So, leadership skills, organizational skills, time management skills, those are all going to be really important in any kind of job that you're looking for. So that's something to really consider too when you're just talking about branding and marketing yourself.
Anybody else have anything to add? Or what questions do you have for us?
Well, Ms. Smith, you just mentioned stay at home. I was a stay-at-home mom for 6 years, and
I saw your eyes widen.
I'm sorry, what'd you say?
I said I saw your eyes widen. So.
Yeah, I didn't know I could use that because it is, like she said, I was managing before I was an entrepreneur.
Absolutely.
So I didn't know that. How would I word that though? Like, how would I slide that in there?
Yeah, so that's a great question. So that would be kind of an example of like where you could fill in a gap year on a resume. But you could have like, home caretaker or, child caretaker, and then just bullet point different things that you have done that would still be relatable to like a corporate environment.
Okay.
But I even think about the tell me about yourself question and how you're able to talk about being a mom and how that experience was and how you still navigated maybe having your own business, maybe going to school. So making that seem like, look at me, I'm Superwoman. I did all of these things. So adding that element to the response of tell me about yourself, I think would be a really good idea.
Okay. So something like a humble brag or something, or
exactly.
Definitely.
Exactly.
Don't just boast about myself, right?
That's always been my problem. Don't like to brag about myself.
I'm a huge believer in, when you're in the interview, you want to be confident. You don't want to be arrogant, but you do want to be comfortable and confident that you're a good fit for this role. I think that being comfortable in that situation, because it's a high stress situation. We all need jobs. We all need money to live. And so it's easy to kind of like, white knuckle that situation a little bit. But trying to be cool, I think leads to confidence, and people non-verbally read confidence. Okay, this person is confident. They're not sweating. They're not, nervously shaking, trying to be perfect. They got this. They're cool. And I think a lot of people kind of interpret that as, they might not verbalize it, right? There's all this study and research that's been done on nonverbal communication and body language and tone and things like that. And I do think being confident is key. And it's obviously easier said than done. But practicing these things and getting comfortable with them is the first step. So knowing, that you're a good fit, and then being able to back it up and be able to talk about these things, and then practicing that. Maybe not write down a full script of word for word what you would say, but I do think, as silly as it sounds, it has helped me at least to practice in the mirror, to practice in the car while I'm driving, practice with my wife or whoever, saying these things out loud, talking about these things in a way that sounds, again, confident, not arrogance, but confidence. And I think that can help a long way too.
Okay.
Oh, Mimi, I know this workshop is not on interviewing, but I did write a script.
Okay.
Because I was also that person that I had no experience except in retail. And so to market myself for a potential internship or job out of undergrad or graduate school, I had to write down my story and figure out how do I want to sell myself. So really up to you, but I encourage you to, if you would like to write a script, write it, but don't memorize it, because then if you forget one detail, you're going to freeze up in front of the employer and just be like, so don't do that. But I would write it just so you can see how am I going to sell myself.
Right.
That's a very good point.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Anyone else? I saw a couple other people here kind of interacting. Dorcas, I hope I'm not butchering your name there. I had seen that you had given some thumbs up reacts. Any thoughts? Rosemary, Mark, Judy? Cleo?
Well, I don't know if you can hear me, but I just never, I didn't think about the organization points of it that they were actually given as far as using that as a skill. And that's what I was agreeing to. And as for me, after I've been in corporate America for 21 years. And so now I'm having to revamp everything because of the job losses due to COVID and stuff. I work in the airline industry. And so, yeah, I work for United Airlines. So, so what I was actually starting as just a journey for myself to go back to school and get everything going and start a new career has actually catapulted me to basically take all of this serious and take all of this in, because I'm now having to do a link, having a link profile and all these things I never really had before.
And so you mentioned your tenure in the industry. I'm sorry to hear about your current situation. I do think, even though there might not always be some overlap or, kind of to some of our similar or to our other situations, I do think that employers at the very least even like to see your tenure. So you've been in the industry, you've been working, you said 21 years. That's absolutely nothing to sneeze at. So, if nothing else, if you really can't find any transferable skills, if you really can't find anything else from your time in those roles that you think transfers to what you're trying to do now, at the very least, we can show an employer that, you've been dedicated and you've been committed. You're not someone who's going to, leave at the first sign of trouble. You're in it for the long haul. And I think a lot of employers are looking for, again, things like that, things like loyalty and things like, a longitudinal career path, things like that. So we can play up those strengths as well. Those are strengths in and of themselves.
Dorcas, to go off of Matt's point, one of the things that I remember from what you just said is the 10 years. And so if you can put that in your summary on your resume to frame it in a way that people know that you've worked in the industry 10 plus years, on your headline on LinkedIn, 10 plus years experience with blah, blah, blah. Employers remember numbers, and to Matt's point, it shows experience, it shows loyalty. So to add that on, I think will definitely not only showcase that this employee can do the job right, but can also help you with your own confidence going into the job market, that I'm someone that does have a lot of experience.
Okay, thank you. I will take all that in. Thank you so much.
That's one of the most successful people I've ever met in my entire life even mentioned to me that, a lot of employers, while your specific major and the skills you've gained are important, obviously, as you get into more industry specific roles, a lot of employers look at a bachelor's degree or a master's degree as really just you were committed. You put in the time, right? It's no small feat to get any degree. And so even having stuff like that says you committed 4 or 6 or 8 years of your life to education, that is, again, a strength in and of itself, that you could be dedicated and that you could put in the hard work and the additional hours it takes. So any amount of time like that, I think can always be a strength, always can be a positive, for sure. Any other thoughts? Anyone else have any questions about their specific situations or thoughts on the scenarios?
Okay. I'm going to just quickly go back to the presentation really quick just to share one more thing with you guys. So I just want to thank everyone for taking the time to listen to this presentation. Please take a few minutes to go ahead and look at this contact information, and you can reach out to us at any time.